The UN Assembly concerning the recognition in the Palestinian state took place today in New York, with notable figures missing from this assembly. Primarily the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, but also the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Al-Sisi absent from UN General Assembly, Egypt's priorities at the United Nations. Some articles were speaking about excuses that why the Egyptian president wasn't there, but of course it wasn't him as well. It was the Saudi Crown Prince as well, Mohammed bin Salman. Now you may ask, how come Saudi Arabia, which led this move alongside France, not be present with its senior figure, head of the state or main figure, when they were initiating all of this? Why does he not go, or is there something else to it here? Well, in relation to Egypt, this is the second time that the Egyptian president refuses to meet with President Trump. And the reason I say President Trump is because, well, Donald Trump intended to have a meeting on the sidelines in New York after this summit with several Arab leaders to talk about Gaza. He wanted to meet with leaders of approximately 5 Arab states, primarily Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and a couple of other countries, to talk about the Gaza Strip. And the Egyptian president did not want to sit with Donald Trump, and likewise the Crown Prince did not want to meet with Donald Trump to discuss the situation in Gaza, especially after Donald Trump's continuous support of Israel and its policies and its genocide in Gaza, and the attempts of Donald Trump to force the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people, expel them to Sinai. Likewise, Saudi Arabia wasn't pleased with the fact that there is continued support to Israel, despite the fact that Israel is constantly against this recognition of a Palestinian state. Now, let's hold on with this recognition of a Palestinian state, because many people were celebrating a Palestinian state and everyone is recognizing a Palestinian state, when we are constantly seeing the worst images and scenes coming from the Gaza Strip to this day, and all of these countries that are recognizing a Palestinian state haven't really taken any significant action to stop Israel from its barbarism inside of the Gaza Strip. Your priority is to stop the infanticide in Gaza. Your priority is to stop the genocide and the mass destruction and the ethnic cleansing that the so-called Jewish state is bragging about in broad daylight with your support. Nor recognize a fictional Palestinian state that doesn't really exist on the ground after all of this Israeli occupation on the 1967 borders that you yourself recognize it on. This is the latest map of Palestine. We're talking about less than 20% of the territories occupied in 1967 here in the West Bank and inside of the Gaza Strip, with more declaration coming from Benjamin Netanyahu that he's not going to be, of course, recognizing a Palestinian state, not led by Hamas, not led by the PLO, not led by anyone, and even a disarmed entity. They don't want anything. There will not be a Palestinian state. Who are you joking? Or were they worried about similar repercussions like the ones that happened in Italy with the mass protests that broke out following the refusal of the leadership in Italy to recognize a Palestinian state? Let's have a look what happened in Italy today. So this is what happened in Italy today after Meloni refused to recognize a Palestinian state, despite the fact that this would only be a symbolic recognition of a Palestinian state. Hundreds of thousands of people were protesting everywhere in Italy and protesting against this shameful position of their establishment. Were the Western leaders, other Western leaders who recognize the Palestinian state, also worried for more repercussions? Regular protests have been taking place all across the Western world, calling for the rights of the Palestinian people, ending the complicity and participation in genocide, especially with the main countries who still support, arm, and totally legitimize Israel, like with Britain, like with Germany, like with other countries as well. And they all know that it's all symbolic because there are no tangible actions on the ground. This wasn't going to lead them to all of a sudden change everything when it comes to Israel and implement things on the ground. Now, Israeli officials, including the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, are saying that there's not going to be any Palestinian state. But Netanyahu was just short of confirming what is he exactly going to do after he comes back from the United States with the meeting of Donald Trump. He most likely spoke with Donald Trump, or Donald Trump spoke with him too, about the proposals that he's going to give to some of the Arab countries that, again, are not getting the backing and legitimacy of the two most influential Arab countries in the form of Saudi Arabia and Egypt, by not sending the top figures in those establishments for various political reasons, but also because of the arrogance of Donald Trump wanting to put people down, sit all of them down, and speak to them in a very arrogant manner. Clearly, some of the Arab leaders don't buy this nonsense from arrogant Western leaders, like especially Donald Trump. He most likely spoke with him about the prospect of Arabs or an Arab force coming into the Gaza Strip, taking control, disarming the Palestinian resistance, and also getting to a solution. Whether Benjamin Netanyahu listens to any sort of proposal from Donald Trump or anything happens of the sort, that's not going to lead Benjamin Netanyahu to do anything when he goes back. Benjamin Netanyahu calls the shots, not Donald Trump. Donald Trump sits and obeys when Netanyahu, the master, tells him what he wants to do without any sort of challenge coming from Donald Trump. Donald Trump can sit and moan to some of his friends in the White House or in other parts about the fact that he had enough with Benjamin Netanyahu, but he wouldn't move an inch against Benjamin Netanyahu because of the sheer influence of the Zionist and Israeli lobbies inside of the United States and the support that he gets from them, let alone the blackmailing networks inside of the United States, now with the clear refusal of Donald Trump to release all of the Epstein files, because clearly they include very sensitive things that might be overwhelming for him and many in the White House as well. This is confirming that the continued genocide and barbarism of Israel inside of the Gaza Strip is going to continue so long as there is no direct involvement against Israel. Now, the Israeli side is saying that the flotilla going to Gaza, they're calling all of them Hamas. They're saying Hamas organized it, and this is going to support them inside of the Gaza Strip, asking them to go to one of the Israeli ports instead of going into the Gaza Strip. Recently, the Israeli foreign minister said, we advise them to come here, not go there, because we will not allow anyone to break the naval siege that we are imposing on Gaza. Everything is illegal. Their existence, their narrative, their actions, a pariah fake entity planted there, and the Western establishment somehow wants to protect it now by recognizing, having this symbolic recognition of a Palestinian state to serve and prolong the life of Israel. And although all Israelis don't want anything called a Palestinian state, the majority of Israelis refuse a Palestinian state, not just the political leadership, but the opposition and the population too. Either you impose action against Israel, or you clearly tell us your intentions, because Benjamin Netanyahu isn't stopping. Now, the level that Benjamin Netanyahu would reach depends on multiple factors, especially in relation to the annexation of the West Bank, because this is the next proposed move of Israel. The EU, again, in a symbolic manner, are telling Israel, well, if you go and annex the West Bank, there are going to be more repercussions. Okay, none of the repercussions and none of the actions of the EU stopped the Israeli genocide in Gaza, and the majority of them who are still allied with Israel, despite the recognition and anything else, still support Israel, despite the recognition of the state of Palestine, still support and arm Israel in its genocide against the Palestinian people, which is what needs to stop, which is what's pressing, which is what's urgent. It's not as if no genocide happens because you and your supremacist media and misleading propaganda don't report about it and plaster it in your mainstream media. Babies are butchered every single day inside of the Gaza Strip, despite your denial and ignoring all of that in your mainstream media. And no recognition will whitewash your blood-stained hands. Your hands are full of Palestinian children's blood, with the weapons that you sent to Israel, with the legitimacy that you give to Israel, and with you, even with your recognition of a Palestinian state, confirming that it's for the sake of Israel. No one is buying all of that nonsense. Plus, we saw what you've done. Well, at least that's from an American perspective, but hey, it's all a show, with the head of the Palestinian Authority, your man, the representative of the less than 20% territories, who is managed and controlled and authorized and not authorized by an individual in the Israeli intelligence, where to go and where to come. The United States refused to grant him visa to go to the UN, and he had to have a remote call. So much for this recognition, so much for this state that they're recognizing. So long as there is no genuine, tangible action to stop the suffering of the Palestinian people, you can go and shove all of your actions and your statements with all of their fakery involved. The real and one and only solution for Palestine is one state between the Jordan River to the sea, with equal human rights for everyone, enforced. You need to enforce this solution to reach a long-term solution, assuming you want a solution. Because clearly the Western establishment wants a neo-colonialist entity planted there, a supremacist, Jewish supremacist, white supremacist, neo-colonialist entity as a barking dog against Arabs and Muslims in the region, bashing them and scaring them on behalf of the United States and the Western establishment, rather than real democracy or real human rights or real equal rights, right? The same things that they've been telling us about their values and how much they preach about them. How about you preach your values there? Democracy, equal rights, human rights between the Jordan River to the sea, regardless of your race, religion, or ethnicity. Without that, all of the moves are going to be symbolic, and none of them will be implemented on the ground so long as you have a supremacist entity that is committing a genocide against the Palestinian people. The only thing that it will do is prepare for the next genocide that Israel prepares for the Palestinian people in the West Bank.